Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. The article that I will discuss in this video has to do with Israel and the Jewish state. Not necessarily with it, it's just they are the place where this issue comes up. And that is, what if in a democratic system where the will of the majority should be respected, what if the will of majority is detrimental to other groups? What are we going to do about it? What can we do? For instance, let's say we are a country and let's say we are 100 people, and from 100 people, let's say 80 out of 100 they can vote to eliminate the 20%, the other 20. They vote. What should happen then? After all, this is a democratic system, and the will of the majority must be respected, correct? Correct. Or let's say you don't do it that way, as a, let's say, referendum. You do it by electing officials to represent you. So let's say out of 100, let's say that's the electorate, 80 vote for a party, that the party will come to power, obviously being 80%, and in the parliament and in the government that they will form with the president, with all that, decide to enslave the other 20%. Then what? I mean, after all, that's the new culture of the country, right? If they say, well, let's institute slavery again, and they institute slavery, and then they decide, okay, the slaves would be the ones that we, the 80%, we decide based on democratic vote. And let's say they decide we're gonna enslave the 20% who we disagree with. They have the wrong ideas. Alright? Is that acceptable? Well, it's through democracy. And then if the 80% agreed with that, I don't know, how should I put it, value, then it must be the society's value to enslave the 20% belonging to a different, I don't know, belief, creed, value holders, I don't know, size, weight, eye color, I don't know, you know what I mean, all that. So what are we going to do next? This is going to be a problem when you realize that actually the culture of a country and with a democratic system is very much controlled by some. Because if, let's say, you have some elites that are going to push with this kind of ideology, and we'll have 80% of the country saying, yes, we should take the money from the other 20%, what are you going to do about it? After all, is the sanctity of democracy. We have a problem here in Israel, they have a problem, but I think just exemplifies exactly that. We have a new government, a coalition government in Israel, and the prime minister is Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu tries to make a coalition. Coalitions in the government are not good or not desirable, and I'll tell you why. Because parties, they have political platforms, and they might oppose other political platforms. That's why they're different. They're different. So let's say these guys say, well, let's take the money from the rich and give it to the thieves, let's say, and the other guy said, no, let's get the money from the thieves, or let's enslave the thieves and enrich the rich. I'm giving you obviously very extreme examples, so they would not be like okay? And this form a coalition. Now obviously the electorate or the members of the two parties are very different regarding that kind of issue. Now imagine how can they get along when they get out there and they form the government. How are you going to give to whom, the department, education or economic, how do you call it, military or defense or intelligence or whatever you departments you decide to assign to what party? What are you going to do then? And you're going to have, for instance, in this case, you have some parties in Israel that we would consider very extreme, close to the guys from 1930s and 1940s Germany. I'm not using that word, but they used it. It's called far right. and they're called /2 Nazi. So we have here a party, or some members of a certain kind of party that would probably form the coalition government that has certain kind of ideals, but they were voted in the office by a population that is forming the Israel nation, right? The nation of Israel, you know, the Jewish state. So this article comes from Associated Press, and it comes from today, December 25. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, rebukes far-right ally for anti-LGBTQ comments. All right, let's see what's going on here. Designated Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a rare rebuke of his new coalition allies on Sunday for saying they would advance laws allowing discrimination against LGBTQ people, pledging there would be no harm to their rights by his upcoming government. So it says Netanyahu is set to form the most ultra-nationalist and religious government in Israel's history between his Likud movement and several openly anti-LGBTQ parties. This has raised fears among Israel's LGBTQ community that the new government, expected to take office in the coming weeks, will roll back gains made by LGBTQ rights in Israel in recent years. Now, how is Netanyahu forming a government? With parties, with members of parties that they were elected, officials, representatives. So those officials were elected by a group of people, members of the Israeli society. So if they are so numerous that this guy has to form the coalition with them, that means those kind of groups, the ideas, are in the Israeli society, just mentioned. They are so numerous that it seems like Netanyahu will have to be like brothers with them. All right, let's say these guys are going to grow more numerous, and they're going to vote through the democratic and legal channels, which is voting and changing the law. They will change the law. Let's say these parties that are against LGBTQ, they will vote, to say we exclude you from this, or this is unacceptable, or all that. Now, what are the new values of the society, and who imposes those values? This is what I'm talking about. For instance, in the United States, where you might have a party who might be in control of the other party, which means the other party will never get control. I'm talking about the Republicans that are dead in the water anyway. But let's see. And you have, let's say, the Democratic Party, or maybe we should not even name the parties, because you're going to figure them out without me mentioning, which I just did. And one party is going to get, it's going to get to a certain certain level, certain power that will get more than 2/3 of the majority in the U.S.'s Congress. Okay, you know what it means? 2/3, and they will have the president, and they will also have the Supreme Court. You know what it is? And why do I say they have the Supreme Court? They will be in charge so many years that they will be the ones that will be able to appoint any kind of judge they want in the Supreme Court. They would find the constitutionality of any law that the Congress will come with. All right. So I'm talking about a party having the big majority that would decide everything, including changing the Constitution. And let's say this party decides to say, okay, those guys are actually Nazis, and they designate them as such, or something along their line, and they change the Constitution because they change. They could, you know why? Because you need, I think, two-thirds of the Congress to vote for whatever you want to implement. 2/3. Let's say you want 3/4. If you want 90%, let's say, by pushing it to that level, let's say it's 90%, and they do it, and then they send it to the Supreme Court said, yeah, that's fine, it's constitutional, it's by vote. These guys, are doing that because that's the judges. appointed by the same party, and it goes to a weasel president who said, yeah, I sign it, and it becomes law, whatever they do, including changing the constitution. Then, by the power of the sanctity of the democratic system, should that happen, and then I say, okay, since we labeled those 10% as being as such in our new culture, remember those, let's say 90% were voted, so they're supported by the population who sees the 10% of the population as being, this kind of people. And they decide to round up all those guys and separate them, put them in separate, let's say, cities, I don't want to call them camps, and they will be just separate over there, taken care of. And we're going to hold and have elections only with one party, which is not going to be elections. And that's the new society. I'm talking about changing the view, the society, the values of a society in a certain way that you're going to have a majority that would harm the minority. Through the democratic system, what's going to happen next? I really, really, really see this happening in the United States, because the trend is there. When you have a certain group of people, a certain party, pointing out to the other party that their core values are threatening their existence. And these guys are going to get numerous, through different ways of becoming more, or catching up the ideas. What are they going to do? What is going to happen with the other minority? They're going to become a minority, because this is the new value of the country based on the number of people who would vote for those values. So we have Israel here that might be in some time numerous. The new values of Israel should be okay against this and this and this and that. What's going to happen? They're going to vote for it, because those guys did not say round them up. Those guys said, we're going to implement laws. And I read the article is about, certain things that are not basically pushing back in whatever the LGBTQ, gained. Now the society, the guys in front say, no, that's not right, that's wrong. And these guys democratically cannot fight them, because they're not the majority. They're a very tiny minority. So you have these guys, majority, saying, you know what, we're going to take care of these guys democratically. Then what? Do you leave the country? Who says someone is going to accept you? And after all, this is your country. What are you going to do? So this is something that might happen here. And the example is this in Israel. In Israel, the tolerant Israel, blah, 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 tra la la. What's going to happen there? And what's going to happen here? I don't know how you can balance these things, because already the trends are there. Where if you say, I disagree with that, I look what happens right now with that January 6th thing, and that's very dangerous. Not necessarily what happened in January 6th, that's a different story, but how these guys seem to be really hunting people or making certain things even greater than they are, in order to, they said, well, the extreme this, extreme that in the Republican Party, remember? Well, that's very dangerous. They're one step away from labeling certain kind of people as being a certain kind of people, belonging to a certain kind of group, and therefore gives the other party the right to take care of them. Then what? And remember, this is not based on groups of, skin color or height or weight or, color of the eyes. Ideological. Based on your ideology, freedom of, use your ideology, form a party, association, tra la la la. The way it goes like this, I foresee that if nothing major happens in this country, that means a pushback towards this, then these things are going to go, I would give 15 to 20, 15 to 20 years, when that party will gain the two-thirds majority everywhere, and they can do whatever we want with the one-third, if you know what I mean. Strange and dangerous. But hey, we love democracy, the sanctity of democracy, when it works our way. When it works that way, it was rigged. Correct? Well, that also tells you about the future two-third majority. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.